One of the tasks we should undertake before beginning a serious study of art and the creative processes is to work to formulate a personal definition of the word art. As with any definition, it's best to first look at the etymology of the word, the history of its usage, and so on. The Greek term for art and its Latin equivalent was not used specifically to denote the fine arts of architecture, painting, sculpture, and printmaking, but was applied to all kinds of human activities which we would call crafts or sciences. All of the definitions offered of the centuries since include some kind of human action through manual skills like the art of sailing or painting or photography, or manipulation of discourse as in the art of politics, or public or personal expression as in the art of conversation, or even in the art of living or dying. Over the centuries, the term art has been most designated to human creations, creations of superior skill which communicate the history and culture of the civilization in which they were created. During the 15th and 16th centuries, art was considered to not only be superior, but works of particular genius, created by individuals that through their talent and hard work were then elevated in high social status. During this time, art was first critiqued or judged by its merits. When Leonardo da Vinci painted the Mona Lisa, his contemporary Giorgio Vasari wrote of Leonardo's mastery in the imitation of life. Vasari critiqued the painting, and he evaluated its merits as he told his readers of the biography of the life of Leonardo da Vinci that the subject of the Mona Lisa was so superbly painted that it appeared to have a pulse. Giorgio Vasari became the first to record the history of art as he wrote about the lives of his contemporaries, and he became the first art critic as he elaborated on the merits of Leonardo's masterpiece. He also developed the first standard of measurement of artistic quality as being the true imitation of life. Art criticism is the discussion or the evaluation of visual art, and art critics usually criticize art in the context of aesthetics or the theory of beauty. Aesthetics is a branch of philosophy which evaluates criteria applied to art. In the 17th and 18th century, art criticism developed into this branch of philosophy. Aesthetics searched for a rational basis of art appreciation, and the standard for art criticism became the concept of beauty, or refined good taste. Aesthetics deals with beauty, art, and taste, and with the creation and appreciation of beauty. It's more scientifically defined as the study of sensory or sensory emotional values, and sometimes called judgments of sentiment and taste. More broadly, scholars in the field of aesthetics define it as a critical reflection on art. The word aesthetics comes from a Greek root which means having to do with the senses. In the field of aesthetics, philosophical essays are employed to propose theories and to intellectually prove the veracity of the theory. One famous aesthetic theory is now termed art for art's sake. 19th century writers like Oscar Wilde proposed that artistic freedom is fundamental to progressive modernism. Artists began to seek freedom, not just from the rules of academic art, but from the demands of the public. Soon it was claimed that art should not be produced for the public's sake, but for the art's sake. The idea of art created for understanding only by the artist was vehemently opposed by writers on aesthetics who preferred the more traditional evaluation of art through the standard of beauty. The writer Leo Tolstoy believed that modern art was veering into a path which necessitated explanation. Tolstoy believed that art should be created so that all people could grapple with the message, and without recognizable subject matter, all hope of understanding would be lost. According to Tolstoy, art creates a specific emotional link between artist and audience, one that infects the viewer. The very best art is that which effectively communicates the message the artist intended. If art is created only for art's sake, it might be that the artist alone could understand his own message or meaning. In that case, he would then maybe explain this only to a few, who would then educate the meaning to others, and eventually only an elite group of people would be able to understand the artwork. Tolstoy felt this would lead to an elitism in art, as art would only be appreciated by the wealthy or the academic. Tolstoy was living in a time in the mid to late 19th century when we first find art discussed by critics and art historians largely in formal terms, which effectively removed the question of meaning and purpose from consideration. From then on, art was to be discussed in terms of style, color, line, shape, composition. Better known for his painting arrangement in gray and black, The Artist's Mother, James Abbott McNeill Whistler created this work, Nocturne in Black and Gold, The Falling Rocket, in 1875. This lovely night scene with its free brushstrokes showing fireworks bursting, rising and falling above the shadows of a garden by the side of the Thames River in London was meant to suggest the nature and excitement of the fireworks. The painting was a product of Whistler's philosophy of making art for art's sake, and was never meant to be, in Whistler's words, the portrait of a particular place, but only an artistic impression. However, to art critic John Ruskin, this painting appeared to be unfinished. In 1878, 3 years after its creation, John Ruskin condemned this painting, writing in one of his art pamphlets, "I have seen and heard much of the Cockney impudence before now, but never expected 200 guineas to be asked for flinging a pot of paint in the public's face." Whistler then sued Ruskin for libel in a risky and notorious case. Whistler saw the trial as an opportunity to assert the supremacy of art over the increasingly powerful arena of art criticism. The trial became public entertainment in London. Whistler became infamous. Whistler argued that John Ruskin's name-calling of a word which meant jester or clown might hinder Whistler's ability to make a living with his art. The judge then sided with Whistler, but awarded him only 1 farthing in damages. The court case elevated Whistler's artistic status, but it nearly bankrupted the artist. In the 20th century, artists began to push the boundaries of art for art's sake. The artist became the authority in judging the merit of the work. If the artist pronounced their work to have artistic merit, it could not be argued otherwise, even if the work was not appreciated by others, or was considered to be ugly or offensive or vulgar. In the 1960s through the 1980s, art critic Robert Hughes developed a theory that since the mid-19th century, artists have sought and achieved acclaim simply through notoriety. If an artist could create a scandal by shocking his audience, that would lead to fame, then wealth, then acceptance of the work, and finally to acclaim and love of the work. Robert Hughes created a slogan for his theory called the shock of the new. The first to achieve artistic stardom by this method did so accidentally rather than through artifice. Edward Manet created a scandal which helped the 1863 exhibition of artworks rejected for the traditional yearly academic salon. There had been so many refusals for the salon that year that Napoleon III suggested a second exhibition be created for all of the refused work. It was named the Salon des Refusés. Edward Manet's Déjeuner sur l'herbe, or Luncheon on the Grass, depicts the juxtaposition of a female nude and a scantily dressed female bather in the background. They're on a picnic with 2 fully dressed men in a rural setting. This painting sparked public notoriety and stirred up controversy. Some suggested that the background was a certain Parisian park well known for prostitution. With the public's recognition of the 2 male subjects of the painting as Manet's brother and his future brother-in-law, the public was shocked. So all of Paris came to see the painting and to see it again and again, and as they did, it elevated Manet's importance as an artist. The next artist to achieve notoriety at an exhibit did so at the Armory Show of 1913 in New York City. Marcel Duchamp exhibited this painting, Nude Descending a Staircase. The public was astounded by the incomprehensibility of the subject. They stood in front of the work discussing with others the lack of any recognizable nude. They couldn't find any figure in the work. New York had lagged behind Europe in the development of modern abstract art, and thus New Yorkers were seeing abstraction for the first time at this Armory Show exhibit. One New York art critic blasted Nude Descending a Staircase, calling it an explosion in a shingle factory. This skyrocketed the artist to fame. It had become the topic of controversy and conversation. The artist quickly capitalized on the success with even more scandal. He declared that this next work was high art simply because he chose it to be, and because he declared it to be. This work, the first of Duchamp's ready-mades, created the acceptance and legitimacy of found art as the artist incorporated the use of pre-made objects into his own work.
This is a really classic example of Dada, anti-art, attacking the art establishment, substituting an object bought in a plumber's shop for sculpture. So an object that was bound to cause offence.
He was testing censorship and testing what people thought of as art. So the traditional idea of getting a lump of clay, fashioning it into something that resembles a human face, was anathema to him, and I think it was just old-fashioned. It wasn't right for the machine age. So he bought these machine-made things and decided to stick them into exhibitions, but not thinking that they were art, always just to test what people would think of them.
What strikes me about the fountain is that although it's a male object, in the sense that it's used by men, it's not, of course, in the position it would normally be in a lavatory. And placed as it is, it's got a feminine form, a sort of hip-like shape. And I can't help seeing the elements of it, the plumbing elements, as female. The signature, of course, is also a bit of a provocation. Mott. Apparently this is a sort of pun or a kind of derivation from the Mott Works company which made urinals. But of course it's Duchamp signing the object but not with his own name. So again an attack on the idea of the artist, the authenticity of the artist, the price of the artist's signature.
The magazine or journal was very much the vehicle, or the most radical vehicle, for the Dada movement. And in fact, because a lot of the things they made were very ephemeral, it's often the only evidence that we have of what they were doing. This edition, there were 2 editions of The Blind Man made. It was really to shake America out of its apathy and its very conventional attitudes to art. The front cover here shows a photograph of Marcel Duchamp's Brailleuse de Chocolat, chocolate grinder, and then inside you have a wonderful photograph by Alfred Stieglitz of the fountain, and the final paragraphs Duchamp says, or Beatrice Wood says, whether Mr. Mutt with his own hands made the fountain or not has no importance. He chose it, and chose in capital letters. He took an ordinary article of life, placed it so that its useful significance disappeared under the new title and point of view. This created a new thought for that object. So this is really a statement of the whole sort of rationale behind the fountain.
And that's the big thing about the fountain. What is art? It's the basic thing that every schoolboy sort of starts with around 16. You sort of wonder why is this art? Why is that not art? And it starts with Duchamp. But it took some years. It wasn't at that point. It didn't create a huge furore. He wrote this little pamphlet. There were a few bits and bobs in a few magazines at the time, but not an enormous amount.
When this object was actually exhibited in New York, its implications for contemporary sculpture I don't think were understood, because people hadn't seen Picasso's Cubist works, which were made a few years earlier, which incorporated real objects in them. And they hadn't seen either Duchamp's other ready-mades, which he was in effect displaying in his own studio. So they didn't know how 20th century sculpture was going to be viewed. With hindsight, we can see this as an absolute turning point and having an enormous impact on the development of 20th century sculpture from really the post-First World War period onwards, right through up to the present day, with artists using objects from real life. But I think in 1917, it was really the gesture itself, the provocation, a kind of up yours gesture, which is what this represented.
I think he intended it to be thrown out of the exhibition when it was first created.
Do you think so?
Yes, definitely.
Do you think it's still provocative?
No, because so many things have happened in the meantime that provoke us a lot more.
It certainly created a certain amount of provocation, and I wonder whether he therefore designed it not to be in the exhibition because of that.
I don't find it beautiful. And when I look at it now, I just see an idea.
I mean, I personally don't like it as a piece of art, but I don't think that matters at all.
Yeah, I don't think it's shocking now at all.
I actually see something that, personally, I think it's a bit of a half-baked concept. It's not really doing what a Urano's supposed to do. Therefore, it's altered quite a lot to try and provoke a reaction.
And he obviously thought it was quite funny to do it, and I suppose I like the humour in it.
He wanted to make the point that craft isn't an important element in art. It's more the thought.
He was saying, you'll accept anything as art, won't you? And they didn't, actually.
It's a piece of porcelain. It's a toilet. Its only value is the idea that he assigned to that at the time.
The activity and the discourse and debate that happens around it's crucially important. And it's led to artists doing things in hugely different ways.
Yeah. This is the kind of thing that drives me loopy. In one way, it turns me into a schizophrenic. In one way, I look at it and I think, oh, for God's sake, it's a toilet, it's a urinal. But in another way, I go, but everyone's going to go crazy about this. Everyone's going to start fighting and arguing and saying it's rubbish, and others are going to say it's wonderful. And I love that then. I love it.
And I just sort of find the concept of us all standing in a toilet, looking at a toilet that's not a toilet, a bit more interesting than the actual object itself, you know.
It's being reproduced extremely carefully to replicate a throwaway object. It's bizarre.
But then the critics and the art historians come along and say, oh, this has a value because of X, Y and Z.
It's true, it's one of the biggest seismic shifts, not in art, just in our culture.
And, you know, if you walked in here and just saw that, you'd say, oh, somebody's not forgotten to mount that on the wall.
Many, many people would say this is the most important work of art of the 20th century.
If you have to be told how good it is, it's not that good.
If you look at him as a painter, you know, he wasn't just somebody who created ideas, you know, he created paintings too.
And they were aesthetically nice, yeah.
And they were wonderful and they were well painted.
It's a matter of opinion. If you think something is elevated to the status of art, then it is, because of that.
How do we then, in the art world, quantify what is good and what is bad, generally?
You don't.
Is that a good
Everyone
thing?
has a personal opinion, yeah. Which makes it art.
So anything that encourages lively discussion in this kind of manner is art.
Mm-hmm.
Robert Mapplethorpe and Andres Serrano became household names in the early 1990s when Senator Jesse Helms became outraged that public funds were supporting exhibitions by these two artists. In May of 1989, Senator Helms, on information supplied by a conservative Christian association, condemned Andres Serrano's photograph, which depicts a crucifix encased in urine. Senator Helms also began a campaign to stop an exhibition supported by public taxpayers on the work of the then-deceased photographer Robert Mapplethorpe. Senator Helms felt that money from public funds should not support what he termed pornographic images. Because of Senator Helms' efforts, the NEA, or National Endowment for the Arts, is no longer giving grants to individual artists, although it still funds exhibitions and concerts. In the late 1990s, the Brooklyn Museum learned that controversy leads to higher profits. Their show, Sensation, was criticized by then New York Mayor Rudy Giuliani for attempting to boost the value of the works in the show by showing it in a public museum. The artworks in Sensation were from the collection of Charles Saatchi, a leading collector and publicizer of contemporary art. Many of the pieces had already become famous or notorious with the British public. An example of this is Damien Hirst's shark, suspended in formaldehyde, entitled The Physical Impossibility of Death in the Mind of Someone Living. Other works, which were intentionally offensive, included a work by Damien Hirst entitled 1,000 Years, which included flies, maggots, a cow's head, sugar, and water. The Brooklyn Museum, the collector Charles Saatchi, and the young British artists have all benefited monetarily through the controversy of the show Sensation. To debate on the topic of what is art, take a closer look at the work of Damien Hirst. Born in 1965, Damien Hirst is reputed to be the richest living artist in the world. He's nothing if not controversial. He's famed for his work showing dead animals preserved in formaldehyde. The Egyptians mummified not only humans but cats, bulls, and crocodiles. Perhaps Hirst was influenced by an ancient culture or influenced by the modern practice of taxidermy. His sculpture, entitled For the Love of God, is a platinum cast of a human skull encrusted with 8,601 diamonds, including a pear-shaped pink diamond located in the forehead of the skull. The teeth were removed from the human skull, which he purchased from a London shop. The teeth were then attached to the platinum cast of the skull. The skull cost £14 million to produce and sold for £50 million, the highest price ever paid for a single work by a living artist.
This is a fantastic space.
It's big.
What are you working on? Is this stuff you've just done?
I thought I might do a cabinet of flies. But there's that great joke, isn't there, where the guy walks into the pet shop and says, "Can I buy a fly?" And he says, "We don't sell flies, this is a pet shop." He says, "Well, you've got one in the window."
Damien Hirst's success lies in using entertainment and humour to set against the inevitability of death. In 2007, he reportedly sold a skull studded with diamonds for £50 million, which would make it the most expensive work of art by a living artist.
Things were like that were made by kings and emperors, you know. It's like to think that an artist can do that in the world we live in today. And I think that'll be, you know, if nothing else, I think that'll seem, you know, important.
Did you pay for all the diamonds then?
Yeah. I mean, we lived in a really good time over the last 10 years. You know, we're making so much money, and then, you know, I mean, as an artist, you always make work from what's around you, and, you know, money was around me. And then I thought, well, what could I do while this money is here that I wouldn't be able to do? You know, it's like you think I could do something really amazing.
How much did you spend on the diamonds before you finished?
It's about 12 million in the end. But there was a lot of fluctuating prices, and it was as we went, and the big one in the middle was 3 or 4.
For the next 3 years, it will be host to a shocking guest, Damien Hirst's preserved shark. The formaldehyde-injected fish will arrive in September at the Met. Its curator of contemporary art, Gary Tintereau, visits its soon-to-be new home.
It's an amazingly powerful work of art. It plays on human emotions. It taps right into our fear of death, injury, dismemberment. Sharks throughout history have been a signal for danger. And simply by placing it in a container in a museum setting, he creates the conditions for a work of art.
Damien Hirst's tiger shark caused a stir when it was first presented in 1991, but it received another round of attention in 2004 when Stephen A. Cohen bought it from Charles Saatchi. But this time the shark was already in bad shape, rotting from the inside. The artist didn't want to accept the mortality of his fish and bought a second fresh shark in 2006. To conserve it properly, he hired a professional taxidermist at the Natural History Museum in London. It took 10 people to inject and soak the shark with formaldehyde for 16 hours. And this time it's probably going to be around a lot longer. The preservation cost over $100,000, which came out of Mr. Cohen's pocket. But the reproduction raises an important question. Can art be so easily replicated, and will it have the same value?
Well, what's important with conceptual art is the underlying idea. It's not the physical expression of the artist's idea. And what conceptual artists tell us is that anyone can recreate this idea. It's the power of your confrontation with that object that counts.
I've come to meet Alberto Mugrabi. This is part of his collection, The Virgin Mother by Damien Hirst. Isn't it a miracle what so much money and so little ability can produce? Just extraordinary. You know, when I look at a thing like this, I realise that so much of art, not all of it, thank God, but a lot of it, has just become a kind of cruddy game for the self-aggrandizement of the rich and the ignorant. It is a kind of bad but useful business. I want to know why the Mugrabis put so much money in art like this.
If you look at artists like Richard Prince.
Do you take Prince to be an artist of significance, do you?
Absolutely.
What is significant about his work?
He's a guy that has his own ideas. He's a person that has done a lot of different types of work.
But Richard Prince's work seems to consist of basically two types. One is those rather weak jokes, and the other one is the transcription of photographs in paint.
He's such a deep person that maybe you don't see it through his paintings, but he definitely is.
If he is, why does one not see it in his paintings?
No, I see it. I think, like, for example, you read a joke like that, and there's always truth coming out of these jokes.
What is the truth that comes out of these jokes?
They're lightly there, but the meanings behind these jokes are so real in today's culture and life that...
Do you think that your activity has an effect upon the prices of works of art?
Well, yeah, we influence other people into liking the artist in a way or another, so yeah.
Why do you want to do that?
As an artist, you always make work from what's around you, and, you know, money was around me. And then I thought, well, what could I do while this money is here that I wouldn't be able to do?
I'm going to play that for you one more time.
As an artist, you always make work from what's around you, and, you know, money was around me.
Yes, internet, he just said that money is his medium.
Why are some artists able to become wealthy and famous when others are not? To answer this question, let's compare the work of two artists. The first artist took the pseudonym Gene Poole in the 1970s. He was an art student at the Art Institute in Kansas City, Missouri. Materials make the difference. Every designer knows that. Gene Poole designed a living grass suit, complete with hat and shoes, completely covered in more than 20 pounds of living grass. He also created a suit made out of 500 recycled aluminum cans. He created a car covered with grass, which he amazed people by driving around. Gene Poole even made an appearance on The Tonight Show, but Gene Poole never became wealthy or famous. Jeff Koons, born 1955, became very wealthy as an American artist working in the style of kitsch. He's known for his giant reproductions of banal objects such as balloon animals produced in stainless steel with mirror finished surfaces and brightly colored. Koons' work has sold for substantial sums, including at least one world record auction price. Critics are sharply divided in their views of Koons. Some view his work as pioneering and of major art historical importance. Others dismiss his work as simply kitsch, crass, and based on cynical self-merchandising. Koons himself has stated that there are no hidden meanings in his work. What may separate Koons from Gene Poole is the ability to shock. In 1991, Koons married a porn star and began to create a series of paintings, photographs, and sculptures which portrayed himself and his wife in a series of explicit sexual positions.
When we were reading a bit about this piece, it said that it suggested death. Now, I can't see how 3 basketballs stuck in the air represent death.
Amazing.
Amazing?
Yeah.
Really? Why?
It's the way, if you look at it from this angle, it looks like 2D. And then if you look at it at the side, it looks like 3D. But it kind of looks like it's in water. It's floating.
No talent went into creating that. And the only thing that's imaginative is the idea that putting basketballs in a fishbowl.
I disagree, because I think you've got to look at the process. It's not always necessarily the end product.
it's come about, it's like what's gone into it.
Above the basketballs, it's like, you know, if you get me heaven, and then below, and like on the basketball, it's like purgatory. So you're halfway in between of going up or down.
It looks like the floating.
It looks like the moving in sequence.
Right.
Like each stage.
So, but what is it? What
Like 3 basketballs and a fish tank.
There's a lot more to it than meets the eye, so I still can't make my mind up about it though.
I think it's like it's defying gravity, isn't it? Because like if you look at it, you're really not going to see that out in the streets, are you?
A basketball will always be a basketball no matter what you do with it, because I don't think there's any other way to look at a basketball.
It's capturing a moment, isn't it? Which is what artists do, and it's like kind of like suspended animation or something.
Yeah.
So like you wouldn't see that in everyday life.
I'd like to smash it.
But by the Would you? You'd like to smash it? Why?
Because I hate ready-made art when I have to slave away every day drawing and I have talent with it, and then people can make millions of pounds by putting basketballs in a tank.
It like links art and sport together, and like it's because the basketballs are like used. It like adds something to it because they're not brand new basketballs.
The fact that it's not obvious and it's not like poking you in the face saying like this is what it is, it makes it better because you can put more thought into it.
It's your own interpretation.
Yeah.
It's not telling you what to think of it. It's what you think of it.
Do you think it's a load of bollocks?
Yeah. Really don't.
Yeah.
I like it. It's different to everything else that I've seen. How come he's got loads of money for this when it wasn't even him who did it? He had the idea, but everyone has ideas.
For our GCSE art exam, which we're doing, if I like put a toothbrush in a shoe or whatever, or whatever, and then be like, oh yeah, oh it's got this meaning, like they just laugh in your face. Like you couldn't, like it's just because they're really famous. He can put whatever he wants in a gallery and be like, oh it's got this meaning, and then just rake in the money.
It's abstract, seems pointless, but there is a point in a way.
What could the point be?
For there to be no point.